Betty, James, thank you both very much for joining me on the podcast. How are you both doing?
Thank you for having us there. Very well, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having
Great,
us.
great to hear, and really glad that you're both joining me to chat all about race across the world. Of course, it's probably a pretty crazy time for you both at the minute, as pretty much halfway through the series airing. But how has everything been like perception wise, and how's everything been since it started 5 weeks ago?
It's a very strange process. Sort of building up to the race. It was quite a exciting time, and then obviously completing it. We're in a bit of a lull between finish and sort of now it's gone out and everyone's viewing it, and being able to see it has been obviously been a really exciting time to see what we've done and what all the other sort of contestants have done as well. Sort of don't want it to end now. We're halfway through and it's absolutely flown by.
Yeah,
But it's been a real experience, and it's definitely once in a lifetime, I think we'd say, wouldn't we?
absolutely. Yeah, I think the whole process, it started this time, well, over a year ago now, the whole process from like sending in our application and yeah, it's just been a bit of a whirlwind really, but I am loving watching it. I think like James said, like seeing everyone else's race, because obviously we saw some of the other couples at checkpoint sometimes, but you never really fully knew what they were doing. So it was great to be able to see like their journeys as well as ours.
Mm.
I guess, yeah, I never really thought of that. Of course, you guys doing your race, you won't have seen the other contestants' races as well. So I bet that's interesting seeing how they got on and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we hear about them a little bit, don't we, at checkpoints when we see them about a little bit of what they've done and how they found it, but to actually see how they sort of react to it emotionally and how they connect with people is good as well, because we knew what we've done, but to see everyone else get on with that as well is good.
Of course, I wanted to ask, with being on the TV comes like being recognised like out in public. Has any of that happened yet? It always interests me if you've been approached or somebody said anything to you.
We've had a few bits and bats, haven't we?
Yeah, quite a few actually. More than expected, definitely.
I think James more than me. James is quite big and people can see him from a mile off, whereas I tend to blend into crowds. So, but now you're in Leeds, aren't you? So you've been going
Yeah.
a lot of that in the city.
Yeah, quite a lot of pictures and people like ringing their wives when they spot me and things, which is a bit strange, but yeah, it's exciting. It's good that people sort of. I'd rather them say hello than not, and just like point and know who I am and don't say hi. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah,
Yeah, it's nice.
I bet it certainly feels quite surreal. But I
definitely.
want
Yeah.
I wanted to now go back and ask, where did the decision come in to take part in Race Across the World? Was it a joint thing? Was it one of you approached the other about it? I know sometimes it can be a two of you thing, but then there's other instances where someone's got to do a bit of persuading to get the other one to do it. So where did it all begin for you two?
Well, I think as the show goes, like we'd watched it as a family and we kind of always, said like, oh, we could probably do that. But it was me that started the application and I think I just didn't really know who I would have take. So James was obviously there, like we both lived at home at the time. Um, and yeah, I kind of got the ball rolling with the application. And it was like a last minute weekend. We were actually decorating my house. And I said, come on, let's just do the application video. We literally did one take. We were head to toe in paint. We looked like shit, let's be honest. And we just sent this video in, just didn't really think anything of it. And then as the process went on, I was thinking, why don't I picked him? Why have I chosen James? So yeah, then we were stood at the start line ready to go. And the rest is history.
How how did it feel then at the thought of going on the show with your sibling? Of course, families fight at times, and
Yeah.
obviously some get on, but other times people say that they couldn't imagine spending this amount of time with another family member. But how did that feel for you two?
I think we've always said like as family, we would always come back as family, like no matter what. If you go with a friend, you've maybe got that risk of not coming back friends. I don't know, but we were always going to come back brother and sister, like no matter what. So
Yeah.
It was fine.
And we put no pressure on it, did we? Like to get along perfectly, or we just sort of so what would be would be, and yeah, luckily it worked out all right.
Just kind of took it how it came then.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we're quite sort of laid back people anyway. We're never going to sort of force one another into doing anything because as children we might have been forced to do a few things we didn't want to do culturally at temple and things like that, but we sort of went with the flow and it kind of worked out all right in the end.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through, obviously you mentioned being at the start line, talk me through the moment when you found out you were going to start in Japan and then obviously make your way across the likes of North Korea, Thailand, all of them countries. Talk me through that.
South Korea. We didn't go North Korea.
Yeah, that's it. Funnily enough, I couldn't remember which one it was. I knew there was one in there which you weren't allowed to go in. I got North and South mixed up.
I mean, I'd been to Japan once before, and we thought maybe that would give us a little bit of a head start. It absolutely didn't. It's just if you go into something like with no phone, no internet, the bare minimum, it's just a completely different ball game. So it was exciting to go back and like see different parts of it. But when we found out the endpoint was Lombok, I mean, Southeast Asia is somewhere that I've always wanted to go. So yeah, I was absolutely buzzing.
Did you?
Oh, go on.
Go on, James.
I was just going to say, like, I think every time we found out where the next checkpoint was and when the next country we were traveling through, it didn't really change anything. It was just like, right, we've got to get here and as quickly as possible. There was still no plan to sort of anything we actually did. But as Betty says, like Southeast Asia is one place where a lot of people go. It's very famous for sort of people who go traveling. So to do that in a sort of competition and get our own diary TV program from it was nice.
When it got started, of course, we were talking about the thought of it there. Did you ever underestimate? Did you over or underestimate how tough it would be, or did it just come as you kind of thought it would?
100% underestimate. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think we've like on reflection, we kind of thought about how physically tough it was going to be. We kind of knew that we wouldn't be eating as much as normal or sleeping as much as normal and carrying heavy bags and things like that, but like the mental toughness that comes with lack of sleep, lack of food and everything else that came with the race was just not something that I don't think we could have ever prepared ourselves for.
No, it was a lot more mentally tough than expected, wasn't
it? Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say it must have been tiring, like you say, Betty, of course, like not eating as much as you usually would, not sleeping as much as you usually would, all of them things, and like the constant like overnight trips and everything where that does prevent sleep. It must be quite a tiring thing.
Yeah.
I think it was the fact that we'd prepared for those things, hadn't we? The lack of sleep, like you were getting up really early for like months before. I did like a few 24-hour fasts to try and shrink my stomach. When in reality, you needed the sort of the mental strength to be able to go, right, well, we've had a long day on a bus or a long night on a bus. We need to get up and go again. And to do that consecutively for a long period of time, I won't give away how long, but a long period of time. It's quite challenging without sort of the basic needs of modern day life, I guess.
And I think it was just like every single day when we were waking up and we were faced with that mental challenge of like, right, you need to make decisions and important decisions, but then you didn't know where you were going to sleep that night. You don't know if you were going to make all the connections you wanted to make. And it was that was like really, really tough. Because if you had a really bad day, like waking up the next day knowing you have to do it all again, you didn't know whether it was going to go right or in your favor or not. So it was tough. When it went right, it was amazing, but when it didn't, it was very tough.
I was going to say, actually, did you have any strategy or anything when you were planning for the race, or was it kind of one of them things you just had to take it how it came because you don't know who you're going to end up meeting, where you're going to end up, just generally, really? Was it one of them things you couldn't plan for it, or did you have kind of an idea in your head of like routes you wanted to take and how you wanted to do it?
It was more just trying to hope for the best. It's quite hard when everything's unknown, especially to begin with on the start line. How, as Betty said, you don't know where you're going to sleep or where your next meal's going to come from. To try and plan that sort of thing with anything could change at any time. You could be thrown off course by a train or whatever it might be. So just try and enjoy it and take everything in we could. And I think we've done that by saying, we'd have no regrets of what we did. So there was no strategy, and it sort of worked out in the end pretty well.
We tried to like each leg kind of looking at the route and where we wanted to go. Like sometimes we tried to like say, right, we're going to race this bit, and like for example, the leg with Vietnam and Cambodia, we kind of said, right, we're going to sacrifice Vietnam and race through it and then enjoy Cambodia. So we kind of had to have like little strategies like that, I think, to keep us going. But no, I think if you had any concrete plan, it would quickly go straight out the window.
And those plans came, third, after, not even the first week, first two legs, 100% no. It was more just trying to learn from every sort of day, every positive and negative you could take, just try and use them to benefit going forward.
Yeah, I think the first couple of legs we'd be like, we'd be on a journey, we'd be like, we'll be at checkpoint tomorrow, and like 3 days later we still were at checkpoint. We just had no like perception of how long things were going to take, or it was just a bit wild getting into it, I think.
That interests me actually. Obviously, as a viewer, we only see an hour every week, and you said about it can sometimes you might say, "Oh, we'll be at the checkpoint tomorrow," but it can take 3 days. Is that how long it actually takes to get from like checkpoint to checkpoint? Then
I think it typically. I mean, on average, I think we did between 4 to 6 days per leg, I want to say, and obviously people are within that day coming at different times. So, for example, we came first at 11:20, and then 2 hours after that on the same day, whatever day it was. So yeah, typically that time, but obviously you've got to condense it down into
it
hour,
is
but so much went on
that they condense it into 1 hour. Like we sit and watch it and we think, honestly, it just blows my mind how they do it, but it's crazy. I wish it could be like 3 days worth, like 3 episodes a week or something. But yeah, it's mad.
You're right there. It's like I bet it's such a tough job condensing all of that into 1 hour for like multiple teams as well.
But they do such a good job of like making everything make sense like every week. But yeah, just to think of like obviously only James and I know like how long it took to get to a job, or all those ins and outs that you just miss, and all those hassles and meltdowns that thankfully they miss out. But
of course, talking about all of this going across the country and everything, I wanted to ask, because you mentioned about did you ever like kind of plan to go and enjoy somewhere as well as like thinking? I know a lot of people do think about the race, but did you also plan to just enjoy the experience as well and take it all in?
We had to try and find a balance, didn't we? So going into it, I was more the sort of race head, wanting to get from A to B quickly, wanting to, fully win it and being competitive. And Betty was more the let's try and get everything out of experiences, go and visit things, and the more traveling head, which we've seen. I think you can already see so far that it's sort of getting a little bit close together, the gap between us. So and it gets stronger towards as we go on. So it was just trying to find things that sort of in line with the race at the same time as getting things out of it that we're gonna like memories that were gonna stay for us and be impactful on us, rather than just doing something that we wouldn't really like or get the most out of. If that makes sense.
Yeah, there was definitely certain moments like when we were at the buffalo farm and we were like, we are never ever going to travel into like the middle of Thailand and do this ever again. And it was definitely moments like that where you just think you've got to lap this up for what it is. And especially when you are working or you're with a family or something like that, like I think you have to switch off from that race element, because otherwise you can't like fully immerse yourself in that experience. And they were like the best bits, like coming back and if anyone asks us what your favorite bits, it would be the families we've met or the jobs we did,
not
the 16-hour buses. So yeah, you kind of had to switch off from the race and kind of park that for a bit.
I guess you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself as well, because no matter the outcome, you want to come away from the experience having enjoyed yourself, which is quite an important thing. I was actually going to ask that. What would you say are the highlights of the trip up to this point so far?
I mean, for me, something I didn't expect to enjoy as much was the homestay in Cambodia. I think was that leg 3, episode 3, when we stayed with that family. I think because it was just something so alien to me, I would never think about doing that. To get, the sort of things we did out of, eating with them, working for them, even though we couldn't actually work, was quite a surreal thing. And I don't think we ever do that sort of thing in England, or it's quite a niche thing to sort of do. So to have that experience was really good. And then obviously the second one in the guava farm, and I guess winning a leg as well, the first tick on the checkboard, which is always good.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you've just seen like the checkpoint that we've just arrived at. Unreal. It was unreal. I think Thailand as a whole, if I was to say like my favorite country, the diversity that we saw in Thailand, from the cities to like the rural sides to the beaches, it was just insane. So if I was to pinpoint my favorite country, that's what I would say, I think.
Yeah, I think that last checkpoint, that looked like an incredible place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And of course, mentioning the families as well, I was going to ask, how did you find the culture? Because I guess one thing that this series has different to the last was, like, obviously there's a bit of a language barrier as well and everything. Like the last one was in Canada, and that was easier for people to grab lifts and everything. But this series, that might have been a bit harder, but it looked like you did meet some really lovely people.
Yeah, I think when we were in Japan, we started picking up some phrases, didn't we, and like learning some words. But the issue was like you'd learn some phrases, learn some words, whatever, and then within like a day, 2 days, you're in a different country and you have to start again.
Yeah.
And the further on like the race went, it was a lot harder. You'll see in the next kind of couple of legs like where we end up, and some people knew absolutely zero English, so it was difficult to get around. But I think coming away from that, you understand like this universal language of like body language and facial expressions, and we got used to like drawing pictures or writing things down, and we still managed to have that connection without having a full-blown conversation like this. But
it was something we didn't count for as well, wasn't it? Just like how hard that would be, and the money as well. Like same with currency, you'd end up exchanging money into another country's currency, and then 2 days later you'd be in another country, you have to do it all again. So yeah, little things that you don't account for, really.
Yeah,
I think like you say as well, I know you said this last night, Betty, that you can still kind of, it was when you were having dinner, have a laugh with people without fully speaking their language, because we did see that.
Yeah, he was literally saying dad jokes and he didn't even speak English. I was like, how is this working? Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
and I think you need that, like, as obviously James and I spend the whole time together. You need that other connection with other people. So no matter how that is, like, it's important to have that. You wouldn't just be at home and like be with one person non-stop for however long. Like, you need other people in your life. So it was good.
Yeah, they did seem so nice, because I remember they wouldn't take any money from you, James, would they, after the lift?
Yeah, so we had to. I think a little thing, I'm sure I'm allowed to mention it, but we had to go through like motorway tolls, like UK motorway tolls, but in Thailand. So we offered to pay for them. Obviously, got up early and before work and whatever. So I offered to pay him, and he wouldn't take it. And I think that just shows sort of the kindness of the people we came across, and how nice and how stuck we would be if we didn't have, the kindness of other people.
Yeah, I mean, secretly we were very, very, very honoured by that, because our budget is lacking. But yeah, very generous.
Talking about the budget, I did want to mention.
Knew that was coming.
Yeah, I have to because we've seen you two during the series at times mention about how hard it's been managing it, which it would be. And I know you mentioned it there as well, going through different currencies. People have different values with the currency as well. But how hard was it managing the budget throughout the race?
That was hard.
It was
I think
tough,
that was
yeah.
harder than I thought it was going to be. I think it was to do with with all the different currencies as well, because James was really, really savvy of like working out exchange rates. My brain, as soon as it kind of got used to one, we swapped, and I was. I'm going to blame James. I'm going to say this is James's fault. No, but it was tough, like managing the budgets and figuring things out. We ended up with a strategy, didn't we, of going to 7-Eleven, like quite a well-known supermarket, and looking at like the price of a croissant, and then we could work out like if the country was like cheaper or more expensive than the last one we just been in. Yeah. And then I could work it out like on a croissant, basically.
Was anyone good at maths back in the day?
Out of the two, I'll give it myself.
I was pretty good at math. GCSE maths I was good at. I got an A. And I also know our maths teacher watches this, and she's probably going to listen to this. We had the best maths teacher in the world, and I was good at maths back in the day, but exchange rates of foreign countries in Southeast Asia, not my strongest point.
It's a tough thing. If I asked what was the toughest thing about the race, would you say it was the currency and managing the budget?
Probably not. I'd say more. It was just sort of the lack of sort of home comforts for me towards the end. Was tough. I mean, this lack of sleep, lack of food was always going to be hard. We knew that. We're not sort of early morning people. We are big foodies, so that just screamed of a nightmare to us. But I think just the sort of external factors of everything, having to think about everything constantly, and your brain's been on the go all the time. Yeah, it was just tough.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was that like having to be switched on. Like I at home, like sometimes go through periods where I don't really want to speak to people and like need to be in my own head and things like that. And when you're doing something like this, you can explain how you're feeling or why you're making these decisions and having to speak all the time. When sometimes you just want to put your head down and have a little nap or whatever. That starts to like take its toll after a while, I think, because you feel like you kind of always have to be on it, and it's not. Yeah, that's just not how we live normally. So
I was going to say that must get tough. There must come a point where you do start to miss home and real life, because that's certainly, if I was in your shoes, one thing I'd struggle with when doing the race.
Yeah, I mean, you see later on with sort of how I like develop, and it's not sort of in the best sort of light. I do start to miss home quite a bit more, and it was definitely something that was on our minds quite a lot, but there was so many other things taken over, and having to think about sleep, having to think about food and whatnot, that it wasn't sort of a main concern. You know, having no phone, a lot of people would go, "Oh my God, like how am I going to live, or how am I going to manage without a phone?" But really, it wasn't a big issue at all.
And I think that made it easier in some ways, because it wasn't like, you know, you'd seen a picture of like your friends all getting together and you felt a bit of FOMO because you weren't there. It was like you just had absolutely zero connection to what was going on at home. So I think in a sense that did make it easier. But I think sometimes when, you know, if you go on like a long holiday or if you go away for a bit, when it gets like the end and you know those comforts are coming, where you can just reach in the cupboard whenever you want and get food, or go down to the supermarket, spend whatever money you want, like that's when you start to kind of miss things. So I think as it gets towards the end, and speaking to some of the other contestants, I think that was like a shared feeling throughout. So
yeah,
I guess at the same time you want to just enjoy it as much as you can.
exactly.
Like
it was really hard.
Once in a lifetime, like you say.
Yeah, definitely. It was like that contrast between really, really wanting to enjoy every moment and take, because you knew it was coming to an end, but also like preparing yourself to go back home and have all those nice things again and see everyone. So
Yeah.
I bet it was a strange feeling once normal life did come back. But without spoiling anything, Betty, James, can you tease a little bit of what's to come from your journey in the next few episodes before the series ends?
We go on another little journey, a massive one, emotionally, which is a good watch, I imagine. We visit some more extraordinary people and views and jobs which we wouldn't have been able to continue without. And that just sort of highlights, the theme of our race, really, the people who have helped us throughout. People we didn't even get to say goodbye to because, they were too busy in their own life, which is quite sad. But yeah, it's a good final 3 weeks, and yeah, I guess just enjoy it whilst it's on, because it's not on for much longer, is it?
Only 3 now, but
I know it's flown by.
yeah, it has. But thank you both very much for joining me and chatting today. It's been lovely to have you on and chat, and look
Thank you
forward
for
to
having us.
following the rest of your journey.
excited. Enjoy watching the rest of it.